Okay, so we'll go ahead and fire that drawing up and we'll take a look at it. Hopefully you guys are finding it no problem. So we're looking for that lecture 14 final drawing. Did that come in for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody problems loading it?
No.
Okay, good. All right, let's take a look at, see what we've got in this drawing. Okay, so first off, we have a surface, which we've used before. So there's this surface, and over here you'll notice that's your existing ground surface, okay? I've provided two alignments, and this is your existing alignment, and this is your proposed alignment. And at the end of this, we're gonna put a cul-de-sac. Now, what I've done here is created another alignment, and I'm gonna explain that a little bit because these are what are called offset alignments, which our template is gonna follow around this cul-de-sac. So we'll get into the modeling of that. So that's one of the things I'm gonna have you guys build on this last assignment is an offset alignment. And the other thing we're gonna do is model an intersection in here. And again, it works like 50% of the time, and then you usually have to edit a lot. So if it doesn't work, don't get real frustrated right now, because you can get real frustrated with them. They work pretty decently most of the time, but not always. Usually you have to do some editing though. Okay, and I'll show you how. That's what I really want to concentrate on. So I've built 3 profiles. Okay, this is the proposed roadway profile. Now I do want you to notice this is a little strange because we're going to model an intersection. So I'm using the existing or the proposed grade this way, and then this has a cross slope of 2%. So if you don't do that, it usually kind of, when it builds the intersection, it kind of whacks it out a little bit. This should model it perfectly because it's going to want to do a 2% in and out. But if you do it something differently, what it usually does is alters your proposed grades. And usually it's really minor, so we're not going to worry about it too much. This is the roadway of the big existing drag. Okay, so we got a 1% in and a 1.5% out. And we have this guy here, which is our vertical curve. So that shouldn't be a big deal. So that profile is for this guy here. Okay, and the other big long alignment is this one here. So I've also created some assemblies for you, and we're going to have to create another assembly, but let's look at these assemblies real quick. This assembly I'm calling a full depth assembly. So we're going to apply this first, but let's just click on this to make sure it looks good. So if you click on this guy, right click and go to assembly properties, we can check things out. Okay, that should be popping up for everybody. Is that correct? Everybody getting that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So notice one thing with assemblies, when you have a bunch of them in a drawing, you really want to name them. So we're going to name this a full, which basically means it's the full assembly all the way through. Nothing's happening left or right of it differently. So I have a couple in there that we'll look at, but this one, let's go to the construction tab, and you should notice we have a basic lane left, then a curb and gutter, then a sidewalk, and then a link slope, and it's the same thing in both sides. So what's cool about this obviously is if you can click on, like, say, your basic lane, you can look at your properties and you can change them if they're wrong. Okay, so notice we've got a 2% cross slope and it's a 12-foot lane. Our curb and gutter is the standard curb and gutter. It's basically 2 feet long, wide rather. We have that basic sidewalk. The sidewalk itself is 6 feet. We have a buffer that is 2 feet, that's in front of it, and buffer behind it is 3. And then we have the link slope, and that's at a 33% grade, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and just cancel out of there. So here's your sidewalk right there, and there's your 2-foot buffer 1, and there's your 3-foot buffer 2, and then the sidewalk is 6. So to model the intersections, you need a half side left and a half side right. So what I've done is this is basically the full, but this one's just named left and this one is just named right. Okay, so that's those you need when you get into intersections. The other thing we're going to need is what we call a transition section. So we're going to build that together. But we don't need that right now. Let's go ahead. We're going to build a quick corridor on these two models that are there, and we'll take a look at them. So we're going to go to this roadway first, and we're going to build a corridor from it. Let's see what I think I called these. Let me give you a name. So the one's called Proposed, and the other one we're going to call Salem. So this is the Salem Road, so we're going to make this the Salem Corridor. Okay, so we're going to go to Corridor, click on Corridor. If it comes up with a name or doesn't come up with a name at all, we're going to go ahead and change it. We're going to go ahead and call this Salem. We want to keep, you want to start naming everything, and remember we can always name it after the fact. Okay, so Salem is the name of the corridor. We're going to use just that basic corridor style. We're going to have it follow an alignment and a profile. So we're going to open this guy up. There should be 3 alignments in there. You want to grab the Salem alignment. And this, we want to be the Salem profile, not the existing ground. Okay. This is where it really becomes important again to name everything so that you know what's going on. So the assembly, we have several assemblies in here. We're going to use what's called the full assembly. And we want to target the existing ground. So we're going to target that existing ground. Okay. Is everybody good? And we're going to go ahead and hit OK. So it should open up this parameters dialog box. Basically, it's asking us to build it right now. But notice it's going from 0 to 10 plus 68, whatever, 58. So this is a region. So we're going to show you a little bit how to play with regions today. But that's a region, so we're going to go ahead and apply this. It'll want to build it. Go ahead and let it build it. You'll probably get error messages. Don't worry about them. Typically, they're not a big deal. But you should see your corridor in place now. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just check this out real quick. I always do a really quick drive through, so I'm just going to come down here. Right click on it, hit drive, hit your corridor. It may ask you that again. Just hit one of the crowns. So we should be in this mode. You're in a conceptual mode. I found before, I just figured this out by the way, guys. So, and I don't know why this works, but if you come over here, it won't let you change any of these options. But if you hit 2D wireframe first, and then you come back to, well, let me see. And then I come back to one of these, it usually changes, okay? If you try to do that without doing the 2D wireframe first, it won't recognize it. So I'm gonna go into a hidden view. And I'm just gonna go ahead and maybe raise it up a little, maybe 5 feet or 10 feet. So we'll get a little bit higher view, and then let's just play it and kind of make sure it looks right. Maybe step that up to like 40 miles per hour and play it. And just kind of get a sense for making sure that it's looking like you want it to. You can see the daylights left and right look real good. So I always do that with a corridor when I make them. It's real simple to do, not that big of a deal. And when you get done and you're satisfied it's good, just go ahead and close it, brings it back. If it doesn't come back to this view, just click over here and hit 2D wireframe and also do a top, okay? Did that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a nice corridor, we modeled it well. What we're going to do now is we're going to do what's called a region. And what you can do is have different areas within this corridor that have what are called regions. So even though the whole corridor is one object, essentially, you can have it broken down into pieces, if you will. And you can have no corridor between certain pieces, or you can have different conditions between certain pieces. So we're ultimately going to want to insert an intersection right in here. So we're going to split this guy. Okay, now this doesn't always work right off the bat. So hopefully we'll get everybody to make this work. So if it doesn't work for you, let me know. So I'm just going to click on my corridor, and then we're going to right click, and we're going to go to corridor properties. So we're going to spend a bit of time today in that area called parameters. Okay, that's what I really want to show you, because that's actually where most of the action happens. Okay, so we're going to go to parameters. All right, and we're going to split this region. So we're going to right click, let's see, yeah, right click and go to split region. Okay, so it's giving you this little indicator. It technically doesn't matter where you click it, so I'm just going to click it anywhere and then just hit enter. And it created a new region. Not sure why it's calling it cul-de-sac. We're going to rename that. We're just going to call that, let's see, we're going to call that Salem. Just call it Salem North. So there's going to be a Salem North and a Salem South, essentially. So go ahead and apply that, rebuild it. This box usually won't disappear until you hit OK. So your region really, your corridor really shouldn't look any different. But if you click on this guy now, you should see two little blue grips. Is everybody seeing those? Where you selected?
Yeah.
Okay, so click on the one to the north. It highlights, and then I want you to drag it just up at any distance. And what it should do is open up a hole in that corridor. And we're going to click on the south one and drag it. And again, just drag it past your intersection. So what you have is now a hole in there. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we have is that looks like two separate corridors. But you notice if you click on it, it's all one object. See that? And these grips can be moved. If you see those grips, you got them at the ends and you got them here. You can create those just about anywhere you want within your corridor. So we have to open this up, because what we're going to do is we're going to model an intersection right in this area. And so the intersection is going to need to have room. And ultimately, then we'll just pull these guys back together and stitch them together. Okay, so make sure you pull this guy out a little bit more. I'm probably going to make it maybe up like by about 800 or something, just so it's out of the way. Okay, everybody else okay? I'm only hearing one person that said they got it to work. Everybody else good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to now create another corridor model here on the proposed road, and we're going to do a little bit of the changes in its parameters too. Oh, by the way, of course, we know that we now have a corridor over here, so you can edit that very easily or find it. And again, this is why it's important to name everything. That's the one thing when you start doing advanced stuff in civil, you don't want to let it name stuff. You want to name it. And you can always, again, name it after the fact. So we're going to create another corridor for this guy, which is our proposed road. So we're going to go to corridor. And we'll just call this guy proposed. Okay. Basic corridor style, alignment and profile. But again, we want to use the proposed road alignment with the proposed road profile. Okay. Now remember, under that proposed road, you have both the surface file and the proposed. So make sure you're grabbing the proposed. We're going to use the same full depth assembly or full width. So that's left and right assembly. And we also want to target the existing ground. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and leave this baseline set parameter regions on, because we're going to go ahead and change a few things when we get in there. So we're going to OK that. So created, there's my region. The region is the full length. And you can actually change the stations in here instead of dragging it. So whatever's are easier for you. What we're going to do is set a frequency up though. Once you go to frequency, and 25 along the tangents is good, but we want to beef that curve increment up a little bit. So anytime you have curves, I've always found it's a little bit better. Now, if you have a lot of roadways, big roadways with a lot of stuff going on, the more you put those frequencies, to smaller values, the more you're going to increase the data. So you can't get to a point where it can be too much sometimes. So just be careful with that. So we're going to hit OK here. And we're going to apply this. Go ahead and build that corridor. Again, you'll probably get error messages. Just usually ignore them. I don't usually have a problem with them. But we should see our corridor in place now. And there's a couple things happening. Number one, it's going into the intersection, so we're not going to want that. Notice there's a little bit more daylight going on here because it's a little bit deeper into the ground. You can also see where I beefed my curve up. I'm getting more typical sections being applied through there. And out here, we got a problem. You guys don't need to do this, but I want to show you what's going on here. If I zoom out of this, do you notice what's happening with my corridor there? It's kind of hard to see that, but can you see what's going on? It's just dropping off. That's called a waterfall. And you can see why it looks like a waterfall. That's a problem. And the reason that there's nothing happening there, there's no profile over here, so it doesn't know what to do with it. So it just drops it off to 0, okay? So that's not an issue because we're gonna not worry about that. But if you did a drive-through down this right now, it just falls off. So it's kind of weird. So what we're going to do is we're gonna build a cul-de-sac at station 16. And we're gonna take this guy back to 15. Actually, let's go ahead. I just want you to click on your corridor. And we're going to change the region location, just dragging back, just anywhere like that. All right. And what I have is we're going to take it right up to that baseline. So you can drag it back a little bit further if you want. Yeah, still, I need to make sure just drag it back till you see the end points of those lines right there. Okay. So there's a profile up to 1600, I believe, but this right here has no profile, so that's why the waterfall occurred. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
And let's go ahead and drag this guy up too. And you can take him probably up to about station 100. Don't worry about it because we're gonna stitch these guys back together. So we're set up here for the intersection right now. Okay. And what I'm going to do, let's go do a real quick drive through on this one. I'm going to click him, right click to drive, select your corridor, and then get it crowned. Doesn't matter which crown. Okay. And again, if you want to get it to a conceptual view is probably fine, but if you want to do a different view, you can, but go ahead and just play it through and see what it's looking like. And you can see as we're coming up, you can see the cut and fill's getting less. Now we're actually getting into fill, going around that curve. You can actually see that you've got every 10 feet, you got a typical section. And this thing should just stop here shortly. And notice there's no cul-de-sac. Although in mine, and you can probably see it too, you can see there's the alignment for the cul-de-sac that we're going to build. Okay, is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, so these two corridors are pretty easy to build. Why don't you guys go ahead and do a save at this point so that if we do mess anything up, we can come back to it pretty easily. If you're going to crash, a lot of times when you're doing these higher level kind of things, that's when it's going to crash. Okay. Okay, so I want to bring this corridor right up to this endpoint right here. Okay, so I want you to click on that, hit that snap, and we're going to snap it to the endpoint. If the endpoint grip doesn't pop up, hit a shift right click and then hit endpoint so that it targets that right there. So that actually took me right to station 1500. Okay, is everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to show you a few things. So I'm going to flip over to my little whiteboard here. So we have a typical section that we're going to follow. Okay, so what's happening if we look at, let me try to draw this for you. So we basically have a center line. Okay, but what's happening is at a certain point, it's like this, but then it wants to widen. Okay. So the normal section that we have running through here doesn't work because what will happen is it'll just keep going through this way. What we want to happen is we want the lane to widen. So as it goes out, it's going to follow this thing, which is like a target. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to have it follow this alignment right here, but it's going to target this back here. So you're going to have two targets that we're going to have to target. Okay. We're going to target the alignment, which is just the horizontal information to make it widen, and then it's going to target the profile so that as it generates stuff, it's going to know what's going on in terms of how it's targeting. So in other words, this guy can raise or lower based on what's going on there. Now, this is going to be the profile it's going to follow. So this is called a baseline, essentially. Okay. So you have to build an alignment on this guy, and you have to build a profile. Now let me show you something here. So I'm at station 1500. So I know that this elevation is coming from the profile at 1500. This has got a 2% fall here. So I need to figure out what that elevation is. Okay, so I can go out in my profile, figure out what my elevation is at 1500, calculate a 2% fall, and use that. Now what I did was did that on left and right, and then I generated a profile that's just coming around. At the end of the cul-de-sac, we're right here, we also are going to hold 2% down because we want drainage away from the cul-de-sac itself. So I can get the cul-de-sac elevation, and then I can get this elevation. So what I did was build a profile that went from here to that elevation, and then it goes back from that elevation to that. So what we're doing is you're warping it, okay? And there's a lot of different ways you can warp it, but that's kind of what's happening. So let me go back to the Civil 3D picture here, and I'll show you what I've done. So this guy is in alignment, okay? And that alignment has a little profile here. So this, you can't tell that, but this is the start point of the alignment. This is the end point of the alignment, and that would be like right in the middle of the alignment. So what I did was went to the profile, determined what the elevation was at station 1500, and then I dropped it 2% at 12 feet. So that's where this number came from, that 819.28. So I had to figure this a little bit out on paper. Civil doesn't do this for me. And then I did the same thing both left and right. So notice you got 819.28 on both sides. At the end of the ball, I knew what the cul-de-sac distance was, or the elevation at the cul-de-sac at 1600, and then I dropped it at 2%. So notice what's happening. This profile is starting there, it's coming up, and it's dropping back. Does everybody kind of see the idea of what we're doing? We're going to work with this over the next 2 weeks. So if you're not catching this, we'll get into this. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
Makes sense though?
kind of.
It does. Well, here's what's happening. Okay, here's the thing you got to understand. There's a profile happening from here to here, okay, at the center, but there's also a profile happening here that's going to warp things, okay? So you got two kind of warps going on. And the template right now, this template that we're using, or this assembly on this guy, won't widen, okay? Because when it hits this, it's just going to want to run it straight through. So we're going to create a special template that will do what's called transition. So we're going to build this template, So we're going to just come over here and we're going to build I keep calling it a template. That's what they used to call them. We're going to build a subassembly, okay? So I want to use, if you have that transition subassembly pulled up, that would be this one right here. Take a look at that. We're going to create the subassembly symbol or the symbol. Then we're going to build a lane transition on the left side. And on the right side, we're going to build the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, and the link slope. And this point right here is the point that it's going to follow for that baseline. So it's not going to follow the center line, it's going to follow that baseline around the cul-de-sac. And this line is going to, this transition is going to be targeted so this guy can widen. It can get either bigger or smaller depending on what it needs to do, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and build this guy. It's not too hard to do, but follow me. If you get lost, let me know. So we're going to go to assembly, create assembly. Let's call this transition. So if it pops up with transition, you're good to go. If it doesn't, just call it transition. Again, what we call it doesn't really matter. It's just so that you keep it named. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to hit this guy right here. All right. Open up your palettes. And let's start out with the basic tab. And we're going to do what's called a basic lane transition. Okay, basic lane transition. All right, so now we have to set up a few things here. So the first thing, we want to generate this guy to the left. If it doesn't say left, make that left. Okay. The insertion point is not going to be in the crown. So open this up. It's going to be at the edge of the travel way. The 12 feet is a default value, but this is going to be able to go smaller or bigger than 12 feet as it needs. So don't worry about what that says. The slope, instead of 2% down, is going to be 2% up. So just make that a positive 2%. And what we want to do is we want this to be able to change both offset elevation or offset distance and elevation. So you want it to be able to change offset and elevation. Okay. So left, edge of travel way, 12-foot width, 2% positive, and change offset and elevation. So we're going to go ahead and just select that guy, and you should notice it's going up, okay, and it should attach itself like that.
So I brought up my palette and I don't have, for some reason, basic didn't show up.
Okay, what you can do is go down to the bottom of it here, Shelly.
Okay.
Right click, and you should see all of the different ones that show up there. Basic should be at the top.
There it is.
Yeah, it kind of buries itself underneath those. Okay. Do you want me to step back through that with you, or are you okay?
I printed out the paper, so you did the basic lane transition, right?
Yep, basic lane, and just follow it left, edge of travel way, 12 feet, positive 2%, and make sure you change that offset and elevation, okay, so that it can transition. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Everybody else doing all right? This is the fine art of corridors. I know if you guys master this stuff, you can be the masters. It's very interesting the way it works, but it takes some getting used to. You really have to knock your head against the wall sometimes. How you doing, Shelly?
I'm good.
Okay, everybody else good? McAllister, you good?
I'm good.
Okay, everybody. All right, so we're gonna now add the basic curb and gutter. Basic curb and gutter. We're not going to do anything over here other than change the parameter to right. Okay, so it's going to be right of the symbol. Just come over and pick that symbol, and it should come in like that. Okay, when you're done, just hit enter. We're going to now add a basic sidewalk. So we're going to go to the sidewalk, basic sidewalk. So this has a couple of parameters on it. Again, I don't like this guy because it doesn't slope, but that's okay. We're gonna let it ride today. So we're gonna set buffer 1 to 2 feet, buffer 2 rather to 3 feet, and we're gonna just use we're gonna let it rip with a 6-foot sidewalk. Also make sure it's right. So just come over there and connect to that guy, and it should pop in like that. So that's a flat section. That's not typical at all, okay? But that's the best they've got right now, unless you decided there would be other ways to handle that, but it's not worth it right now. Okay, everybody good? So,
Yeah.
okay, so we got one more we're going to add, and that's called generic. We're going to go to the generic tab, and what we're looking for is the link slope to surface. So we want, this is the thing that's going to create the daylight line for us. Okay. So again, we want to make sure that it says right. If it doesn't say right, I think it usually picks up if you were working right, it kind of sets it to right. That's what I've noticed. The thing we want to change this to is the slope. So this is going to be a 3:1 for a 3:1. Hit enter. Should say 33.3% grade. And we're just going to do this. And this is going to be both for cut and fill slopes, even though it doesn't show you that. It knows that because it says cut and fill. So we're going to go ahead and you're good. You build another, we've got another assembly in there now. Okay. So there's our transition assembly. We're going to have to use this in terms of the intersection and the cul-de-sac. So we're going to apply this to the cul-de-sac first, see if we can get this to work. Let's go ahead and do a save too at this point. Okay, real quick save. Is everybody okay now? Okay, so we're going to come back to here. So we're going to do two things here. We're going to add a baseline, and then we're going to add a region. And when we add the region, that's going to allow me to create a region of this cul-de-sac, and it's going to link this guy into part of this. So it's kind of neat. All right. Is everybody good now?
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to just click on your corridor, right click. We're going to go to corridor properties. Parameters, add a baseline. Okay. So the name of the baseline is cul-de-sac. If it popped up with that, that's cool. Well, actually, the name of the baseline is anything we want it to be, but I named mine cul-de-sac. So if it doesn't say cul-de-sac there, go ahead and call it cul-de-sac. But what's critical is we want it to follow the alignment called cul-de-sac. So if that doesn't say cul-de-sac, that's the one I built. That's that green one there, okay? Is that good for everybody? Go ahead and hit OK. And what that's done is created basically a region. So we're going to go ahead, whoops. All right. So right click on that and then hit add region. Region name will be cul-de-sac, but for the assembly, you want to use the transition assembly. Okay. How we doing?
Good.
All right, open up this little plus here and you'll see there's a cul-de-sac region there now. And it should say transition. And it's got some other things, but if yours doesn't have a vertical baseline associated with it, like mine doesn't, go ahead and see where it says click here. And we're going to make sure that for the cul-de-sac alignment that you're going to use the cul-de-sac profile. Okay, so now it's got both an alignment and a proposed vertical baseline. Okay, is that good for everybody?
For that vertical baseline,
Yep.
For the profile, you said click cul-de-sac or
Yeah, cul-de-sac. So it should say basically proposed road cul-de-sac and proposed road for the vertical baseline, also cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and apply it. Build the corridor. You're going to get errors. Let's go ahead and hit OK here and close it. Now, does it look right? Anybody see what's happening? Well, let's look at it.
My errors showed up over my OK button and I can't move it out of the way.
Let's see. Let me see what you can do. You can't move the panorama.
No, it won't let me.
Just hit enter and see what happens.
No.
That didn't work.
No,
Um,
I guess I could, I don't know.
try escape.
No,
Let's see. You probably have a corridor though, so go
yeah,
ahead.
I see it. I
Okay.
just can't.
All right. See, just like click on something else. Did that like terminate it?
No, it's, okay, hold on. I closed the big button,
Okay.
so then it disappeared.
All right, good. So can you see this now?
Yes,
Yeah, that stupid panorama, what I've done is make it smaller. Okay. You can, next time it's open, you can drag it smaller. Okay.
yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. And yeah, I don't, there's probably a way to disable it. I just make it smaller because sometimes those errors are important. Okay. Here's the bottom line. Do you notice the endpoints of these guys are not touching that green line? Does everybody see that? Is that what's happening on yours like this?
Yeah,
This is not a properly modeled cul-de-sac. Okay. It's also, do you notice on the exterior, it's not targeting out to the existing ground because there's no line out here like this. See that? So we're going to have to fix some things. Okay, so it's not a big deal. We're going to go ahead and just click on your corridor anywhere, right click, and go to corridor props. Okay, Shelly, here's what you might do. You should be able to move this box somewhere. So like maybe chuck it over to one of the sides so it's kind of out of the way.
okay,
So that thing won't be completely
right over top.
covering you. Yeah, it's an issue. All right, is everybody also good? Okay, so we're gonna have to go to targets and we're gonna have to deal with some target issues, okay? So it didn't target properly, and this is really typical with corridors, okay? So we're gonna go to the cul-de-sac region, hit the target button, and there's gonna be 3 types of targets: a surface target, a width target, and a slope target. And it should say none for everybody, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, so we're
Yeah.
gonna click up here for the target surface and grab the existing ground target, okay? Is that good?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the transition alignment, open that up. You'll notice there's nothing in here that it's transitioning to, but what you want it to transition to is the proposed road. So click on the proposed road and add it. It should occur down here in this box. And when we get to the intersections here, you're going to have more than one target. So you can have a bunch of different alignments, but we have a very simple single alignment. So we're going to go ahead and okay that. And we're going to come down to the slope and elevation targets, and we want it to target the profile. So we don't want it to target the cul-de-sac, we want it to target the proposed road, and we want it to target the proposed road profile. So we're going to add that, okay, and okay that, and okay that again. So we set our targets up, and we'll see how well these model. Also, you might notice, which is nice, when you're working on a region, it highlights that region for you. So that's really cool because especially when we get to intersections, you're going to see they're pretty nasty because they can have multiple regions.
Can you do that again?
Sure. What do you want me to do? What? Go into the targets?
Yes,
Okay. So are you clicked down here on the target or the cul-de-sac region?
yes,
Okay. So click on your targets. This box pop up for you?
yes.
Okay. So you've got none for all of your objects right here, right?
Except that it says target service, I changed to existing ground.
Okay. So what you want to do for width and offset targets,
Okay,
click on that. Find the proposed road, click on that, and then you want to add it so that it'll pop in down here.
okay,
Does that work?
yep,
Okay. And then you want to do the same thing for the slope and elevation target. You want to click there. Now, you got to make sure you get the right alignment. We want to target the proposed road alignment. So we're going to go ahead and open this up if it's not saying that. Hit the proposed road.
all right.
then grab the proposed road profile, not the surface, and add that as well.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, you must be far away a little bit. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Just want to make sure that I'm getting everything.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
All right, so we're good now. So we're going to do one more thing. With cul-de-sacs, it's really nice to increase the frequencies. Okay, so what we're going to do for the frequency, we're going to beef those up. For the tangents, I want to beat that up to 10. And for the curve increment, I mean, sometimes I'll use 1. I'm going to go ahead and use it at 2. And we're going to OK that. OK it again. Rebuild that corridor. And you should see a cul-de-sac like mine. That work for everybody?
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Doesn't it? It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Does.
Now, do you see any irregularities, anybody? Do you notice over here, there's a little bit of a bump irregularity, and there's a little bit of one here? Does everybody see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's probably not that much to worry about, but the only way you could make that better is to put a little curve in here on the horizontal alignment. So what you can do with a curve, it'll make it a lot prettier, okay? And it probably calculates it better, but we're not going to worry about it, okay? So let's drive down this thing and let's take a look at it. So we're going to come down here. Let's do a save real quick just to make sure. I'm going to go ahead and hit this guy, corridor, right click to drive. We're going to drive into this cul-de-sac and we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like. This is, to me, this is your ultimate test on what's going on here. So again, if you want to change that, I'm going to go to 2D wireframe and then I'm going to go to hidden. Hidden gives me a pretty nice view overall. And I'm going to raise it up about 10 feet. I'm just going to go ahead and play it. And let's play that in and see what happens. It's looking pretty good so far. You'll see that cul-de-sac show up, and that cul-de-sac is going to be modeled just like it really would be. And the beauty is now you have all this information. You can export that out to your field crews. You guys see that? How'd that look?
Pretty clean.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what you said, pretty clean, is important, McAllister, because if you see irregularities here, there's going to be irregularities, you know, when you look at the whole thing. So
Right.
yeah,
That
so
makes
that's
sense.
really important. That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now notice this is all one model too, so that's really cool. Okay. And changes, you make changes to your profile, or if you make changes to your templates, they're going to reflect all that. So we could theoretically go in and change that. We could add a little arc in here if we wanted to, and it would re-update all of this, but I don't think it's worth it. I might have you guys do that on the one I'm going to have you guys draw, just because it actually makes a little bit better model. And if you wanted to get a little bit more frequency in here, you know, you could set your tangents down to, you know, like 2s or 1s, even 2. So it does make a difference in how many points you're getting. But remember, the more points you have on that frequency, the more templates or sub-assemblies, the bigger that file gets overall. So, okay. Is everybody good with this so far? Pretty impressive, isn't it? Okay. So now here comes the fun part. This one, we're going to build an intersection. Now, by and large, sometimes you'll do this and it works right off the bat. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. So hopefully this executes. I think I played with this a bunch the other day just to make sure so we wouldn't have any issues. We're going to have to do some editing, okay, in this intersection, but this is really neat to model. So they have this intersection routine which builds a corridor. Now, when you build the intersection, you can create it so that it's linked into this or this one, depending on what you want it to do. Or you can keep it separate And for some reason, people say that it's preferred to link it into this guy. But if you do that, then your corridor parameters, you got to deal with all of the parameters. I find that I'm going to keep it separate. But just keep in mind, you can't really physically link these guys together if they're not created together after the fact. There might be a way to do that, but I've never found an easy way. So we're gonna keep our intersections separate, and primarily because when we model it, it's going to be easier to change parameters. Okay, and we're also going to need all 4 of those assemblies. So that's why this one's kind of a little bit hairy to deal with. Okay, is everybody done a save before we get started? If you want, we might want to do this. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to click on my 10 surface here and right click. Let's go to surface props and let's just toggle the triangles off if you're to the display mode. So nothing should be turned on. That'll just get it out of our way. It'll be a bit cleaner to see as we're working here. Okay. Everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay, so zoom up so you can see your intersection because you have to tag it, all right? So we're going to go to this intersection guy here. Notice they actually have several different types. A normal intersection, a roundabout. I've never tried that. And they have these approaches, so different ones. I typically not use these two men. You're going to have to play with these if you really want to get good with them. That's my opinion. And there's always little nuances about them. But we're going to try this guy right here, create intersection. So it wants to know first the intersection. So zoom up so you can see it and make sure you've got an endpoint or intersection O snap up. So click on that. It takes it a sec, but then it should pop this dialog box up. So it's going to name this thing intersection with like 1 or 2 or 3. You can call it anything you want. That's up to you. All right. So we're going to go to next. All right, so this is where it gets a little bit involved, and we're not going to mess with it too much. So this wizard's pretty good. It does a lot of your work, but there are some things that you have to deal with. Geometry details and road corridors. So first off, it knows what it's calling the primary and the secondary road. Okay, so it thinks that Salem is the primary road, which it probably is, since that's like our existing, and then the proposed road is the secondary. So right in here is where you can swap them if you want to, but we're going to leave them set to that. Okay. Where it asks me about offset parameters, let's go open up that box. So you have to kind of know like what the width is of your roadways, obviously. So the distance from our center line over to our traveled way is 12 feet, and it's 12 feet in both, and this actually has that set to that by default. So we don't have to mess with anything, but if that would be different, left and right, this is where you would have to get in there and change things. Okay, so notice as you click on it, this little graphic is nice too, because it's gonna, that image tile kind of shows you what you're dealing with there. Okay, so we're gonna not change anything there. And then there's also curb returns. So this would be the radius that it's going to use. And again, that would be dependent on what typical section you're using. By default, they're using a circular arc at 25 feet. And notice it knows, this is really an intelligent little thing. It knows that there's going to be an arc here, and when you go to next, it knows there's an arc there. But those arcs could be, you know, different depending. So we're going to let it go rip with those, because those are 2 settings that we want, 25 on both. So you can either hit OK or cancel, doesn't matter. All right, so there are also lane slope parameters. I'm not going to mess with these, but if you go to these, you can see this is also set to cross slopes at 2%. So we'll let that rip with that. And it will build curb return profiles for you. So there's information along this way that'll also, you have to get in here and play with this a lot to understand all of this, but for right now, I'm just going to let it rip. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is set the sub-assemblies up for what piece it's going to use. So we're going to go to next. So this is the real critical piece right here. Go to next, and you have this box here. So here, right here is, you can create your corridor at the intersection area as a unique new corridor, or you can add it. So what a lot of people recommend you do is you add it, and then you can tell it to add to whatever. We're going to just create it separate for today, because that way we can edit it easier. And that way I don't mess up my other corridor, because this is going to bring in a bunch of regions. So we already have 2 regions on Salem. We don't want a bunch more to deal with. Okay. All right, so we are going to use here, we have to get into this section here. So the surface to daylight to, if it doesn't say existing ground, go ahead and set it to existing ground. It probably already has that by default. So notice there are curb return assemblies, and then there's primary roads and secondary roads. So we're going to click on that curb return first. And we want to use, on the curb returns, we want to use the transition section. And notice what you do. When you do that, it shows you what's going to happen. So it's going to allow this thing to widen in here. Okay. Now, notice what it's targeting right now. It's targeting the edge of pavement, and that's not what I want it to do. So we're going to fix that later. Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go now to the primary road full section. Click on this guy, and we're going to grab the full assembly. So it should come back and it should say full there. So for the primary road, daylight left and daylight right, I have 2 of them in there. So I've got one called left half for the half section, and for the daylight right, I got one called right section. Okay. Now it doesn't always use these guys, so sometimes it'll use them and sometimes it doesn't. So it just depends on what's going on. All right, so it's secondary road. Full section will be the same full template. So realistically, if you were doing like a highway, you could have a highway primary typical section that's different than the one that you're going. So you can have a bunch of different typical sections. That's why this can get really, really confusing. But again, you notice what it's showing you, how that's going to apply that. So secondary, for the left half, we're going to use the same left half because we're using the same typical. And then the last one will be the right half. Right half. Okay, that. So just to step back through that, it should say transition, full, left half, right half. And then it should be full, left half, right half. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right. So this is where the moment of truth happens. So we're going to go ahead and create it and let it rip. And you're going to get errors. Don't worry about it. And we're going to zoom out and look at this. And mine's not showing me anything. Is yours showing you stuff?
Yes, mine is.
All right. If it's not, try a regen.
Oh yeah, regen always helps.
Well, the weird thing is that with this routine, sometimes it doesn't do it right. So yeah. So actually, if you look at our intersection, it's pretty decent. Okay. Now these little symbols right here, that's just a symbol. You can get rid of that if you want, because that just gets in my way. All right. Does that look pretty good for everybody? This one modeled really nicely, by the way. It doesn't usually model that simply, but that one modeled pretty well. Does everybody's look pretty good?
Yeah.
All right. Now, you do have holes here. There's nothing going on right here and nothing going on right here because of the way it's targeting. Okay. So we're going to edit this guy, but everything else looks pretty good. And we're going to check that out here in a minute. So I want you to understand this, by the way. If you do this on your own, it doesn't always work this flawlessly. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to click on this corridor because this is a separate corridor now. And we're going to right click and we're going to go to corridor properties. And you notice you've got all kinds of regions. So let me do this a minute. Cancel out of there. You might want to pan this guy over so we can see that box separate than the other box, okay? So go ahead and now do that and then try your parameters. Okay, that way I've got them separate. And so notice we really have several different parameters. If you click on each one you click on, notice it'll highlight for you, so if you need to make changes, it's really intuitive. Now, I've got two transition issues. Notice if I hit the top transition and the bottom transition, how they're not targeting the way I want them to. So these got target issues, okay? So we're gonna fix that. So I'm on this one, you might call that's probably the Northeast. I don't know what they called it. So we're gonna go to the targets on that guy. All right, is everybody good?
Yep.
Okay, so I have the existing ground target is great, okay? But when I get down here, the offset targets and the slope targets are not right. So it's gonna click on the word varies, and notice what it's done is it's targeted the alignment for the proposed road. That's great, but it's not doing the right one for Salem. So I want you to click on, mine says Salem right. Does everybody say Salem right 12 feet?
Yeah.
Okay, that was built by this routine. That wasn't there before. But we don't want that one. So you're gonna click on that and you're gonna hit the X and it'll take it out of that. In this list up here, I want you to find the one just called Salem. And go ahead and add that. We're gonna go ahead and okay that. So we got proposed road and Salem. So that's the horizontal. It's gonna take this guy, it's gonna push it out. It's gonna fill that in. But we want it to follow the profile. So I'm gonna go here, and the road profile that it's following is fine for the proposed road, but it's wrong for the Salem. So we're gonna get rid of Salem. We're gonna select the Salem alignment, and down here then you have two profiles to choose from. I'm going to choose the Salem profile and add that. Okay, so you should have proposed road profile and Salem profile. Is that good?
Yep.
So go ahead and okay that. And you can okay this box now. All right, so we've made some changes. Notice it says, hey, you made some changes. I want to beef up the frequency too. I really like to do this on intersections. So I'm going to go to the frequency, and I'm going to make this frequency on the curve increment, I'm going to make that at 2. So we're going to hit apply it, rebuild it. You can close your, well, you may have to close this box. So I'm just going to close that. Let's take a look at it. Do you notice what it's done there? It brought this in and it targeted the horizontal and the vertical. So it's brought this in more like you wanted it to see. So you can see this side is not correct, but this side is now. Is that working for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we got to do this other side now. We could have done them both at the same time, but I like to execute them one at a time just to step through it. I just want to make sure it's looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy. We're going to go to the corridor props. This time we're going to find the other transition, the lower one, and we're going to do the same thing because its targets are wrong. So I'm going to do the targets first. Existing ground is good. The width and offset targets and the slope and elevation targets are incorrect. Okay, so we're going to go to the varies on for that one. Again, proposed road is great. The Salem right is not. I'm going to take that out and find just the straight Salem one here and add it. Okay, so proposed road and Salem is what you should have here. Okay, that. For the slope and elevation targets, Salem road is incorrect, proposed road is great. So we're going to go to Salem road, delete that. Go to select alignment, Salem Road. We want the Salem Road profile. We want to add that. So we've got the proposed road profile and the Salem Road profile. Okay, that. Okay, this back. We got one more thing we're going to set as frequencies. We're going to beef those frequencies up. Beef that frequency up to 2. When I say I'm beefing it up, I'm actually making more cuts, even though I'm going with a smaller number, so it's actually generating more. So we're going to go ahead and apply that, rebuild it. Looks like it fixed it just fine. And you have a wonderful intersection here now. Should have a really good intersection. How's that looking?
Pretty good.
All right, let's finish this. So what I'm going to do is take this guy and pull this guy straight up, snap him into that one. I'm going to bring this guy here, snap him into this one. Now don't go past him. You can use an O-snap if you want. It's probably a better idea so that you snap to an endpoint, because you can go past it if you're not careful. I might do the same thing here because I'm not sure. See, yeah, I didn't hit that one. If you don't hit it, then you're going to have a gap in there. So I want to do the same thing here. Go from this guy, just change that region up to that endpoint. Don't worry about the error messages. They pretty much always occur. Now what's important to look at is make sure like the daylight lines are hitting. They're hitting there. That's all hitting. By the way, this usually never does this perfectly. You can see a little bump there. This has really modeled it well. Is that working for everybody?
Yep.
Congratulations, guys. You guys modeled an intersection in a cul-de-sac. And I'm going to tell you what, this is a pretty advanced thing, okay? So if you can master this, you can be really, really good at what you're doing. My corridors are also, if you open up your corridors, they might be telling you need to update them. So I'm just going to right-click and rebuild that one. It's probably going to change anything, but I'm going to go ahead and do that for both of them just so they're all in date. All right, let's do a save. We're going to drive down this thing and see what this looks like now. Corridor, right click, drive, select it, crown, and go ahead and play it. You're going to see it comes right in. I'm going to pause it right when we get into that, but look at this intersection. I mean, that right there, that is really a well done intersection. Now there's a lot more you can get into on this, okay? Just so you know, I'm going to reverse that. Just like to play it in 2 directions typically. And if there's any errors showing up, like on my surfaces or any irregularities or anything, they're going to show up in this view. They're definitely going to show up in this view. How's that looking for everybody? You guys are getting good fly-throughs? I'm going to try this one. I'm going to fly into the intersection from that point. Just look at that. Sometimes it's hard to pick this guy. I've found sometimes you can find another line and just use it. So I'm not right on that, but it's okay. You get the idea. It looks like it's coming into my intersection. So there's my curve coming in. Got a nice intersection modeled. Particularly want to look at this point right here. That all looks real decent. How's that working for everybody? Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations. This went pretty smoothly. It doesn't always work that smoothly. Particularly the cul-de-sacs are a lot easier to model typically than these guys. Now, again, part of it is because I probably don't do it as much, you know, and that's one of those harder things. If you don't do it a while, it takes a while to get into it. But in general, that's good process. Okay, McAllister, we're going to hit your question. We want to build some surfaces here, and then from those surfaces, we want to create some contours stuff, okay?
Okay.
So what we want to do, does anybody remember how to build a surface out of a corridor? Let's try that first. Let me ask that question.
It's just create surface, right? Under
Well,
surfaces or
No, it's not quite that simple. You have to go to your corridor. So I'm going to go to the corridor, okay? Right click, go to your properties. Now you can probably do it different ways, but this is the easiest way, okay? So we're going to go to this surface right here, and this is where we create it. Go ahead and create that surface. So it's going to call this proposed surface. It's using 2s and 10s. We'll flip that up here in a minute. I mean, you can change that if you want now, I think. Let's make that 1 and 5 design. You can do that after the fact if you didn't catch that. So I do want to add the top, and I like to make that guy a break line, okay? So we added the top surface to make the surface out of. So like if you wanted to, let's say you wanted to see what the cut surface was, you could actually build a cut surface, and that's what they might actually send to your machine control stuff instead of doing a top surface. So this stuff is pretty intuitive, and it's pretty cool the way it works. So what we want to do is shrink wrap this. We want to create a boundary. So right click on that. Corridor is outer boundary, so it shrink wraps it. Go ahead and apply that. You have to rebuild it. And we're gonna okay that. You should see contours in there now. Is that working for everybody?
yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so let's do something here. I want to show you a couple things that with the drainage patterns on cul-de-sacs are going to be pretty important. So if you're at the Home tab, go up here to your layers. We're going to hit this little freeze button right there. That's going to be a freeze. So we're going to click that and just make sure you get the corridor, not the surface. So it should take that out. And we can unfreeze that real easily. So we can see our contours really nicely. Everybody see that? Notice it froze that corridor too, but we haven't created a surface. Is that good? Any questions? I'm guessing not.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, so let's take a look at something here. So we're going to go to, just click on your surface, and we're going to right click, and we're going to go to surface properties. Click on your surface style here. What we want to do is look at slope arrows. So in order to do this, it's better to probably have your triangles on. Now your triangles are going to be pretty involved, but this will show you kind of your drainage pattern along your road. So we want that on. We want to go to analysis, go to slope arrows, and let's see what that's set to. Mine is set to rainbow. I would set it to rainbow. It's a lot easier to see. And quantile's fine. If you want to do it to 8, that's good. So basically just make sure it's set to rainbow, quantile, and 8. Go ahead and apply that, okay that. And let's see, we need to come back to display. Turn your triangles on and turn your slope arrows on, okay? Oops. Triangles and slope arrows, apply that, okay that. And there's your drainage pattern. So cul-de-sacs, obviously, you want them to drain either out of the cul-de-sac, but notice what's happening. The high point in my cul-de-sac is right here. Everything's sloping this way, and then it's kind of flowing in this direction around it. It's kind of hard to tell with all these arrows, but it's flowing in this direction. My low spot in my cul-de-sac is right out here. So what would that tell me I need to do at that point?
A catch basin there?
Yeah, we would have a catch basin. If you've ever driven in cul-de-sacs, you'll notice there's a usually a catch basin at the end of it, unless it's just draining a different direction. So, I mean, if that thing's high up, it might be draining out. But notice the rest of this thing is pretty much primarily just going downhill. So it's hitting that curb and gutter, and then it's just flowing. I don't think we have any low spots developing because this road's just going all the way down. So notice that's just that's a very cool tool when you're dealing with drainage, particularly like say on your intersections. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, let's change your surface back. Click on your surface, right click, go to surface props, contours. We're going to toggle off triangles. We're going to toggle off slope arrows. We're going to toggle on majors and minors. Oops. And then go ahead and OK that. And you should be back in business. Okay, McAllister, now we're going to get your question. So what we want to do is generate a line through here that we can use as a hide for our other 10, so that we don't see all that busyness coming through this. Okay. So what we're going to do is come up here, create design, and there's this create boundary from corridor. So I think my corridors are turned off. Just hit enter and it should allow you to get to a list. So the corridor that we're looking for is called proposed. Hit OK. And it should just generate a line right around it. That's your daylight line. Does that work?
Yeah.
So this is a 2D polyline, and it puts it on the 0 elevation, or 0 layer, excuse me. So if you want that thing to be hidden, okay, what you can do is probably freeze it, number one, but you might want to put it on a layer that's just hidden out of the way, or you can freeze it. So you might want to generate a layer for that. If you've got dimensions, you might put it on the def points layer. If you've got viewports, you might put it on the viewport layer. But otherwise, it's going to show up, okay, when you print out. So, all right, so that's what you need. And then we're going to go back to our surfaces. Let's go to the existing ground surface. Let's go into this guy. So we're going to turn on major and minor contours on this guy. And they should be at 5s. If they're not, set them to 1 and 5 background. By the way, do you notice how nice they're hitting? Is that working for everybody? Any questions?
No.
Okay, so what we have to do is essentially clip these guys out of the middle of this one, okay? So we are going to go to the existing ground surface, open it up till you find boundaries. So we're going to look at boundaries here, okay? Got to go to boundary, right click and say add a boundary. Now there's different types of boundaries. You can do an outer boundary, a show, or a hide. We're going to do a hide boundary. And if you want to give it a name, you can. I mean, that's up to you. You don't need to. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Select that guy right there and hit enter. And it should hide that right underneath it. That's just a mask. And now you can see that they're just hitting where they should. So now I've lumped them together. So one way to do that would be to paste surface, but this is a nicer way. You can keep your surfaces separate. Any questions?
So is that all that's needed then to mask that?
That's all that's needed. Did it mask it for you?
Yeah, and I went back to our assignment 11 and I was able to get it on that too.
Yeah, real simple. Now
So-
here's the thing, McAllister, don't delete this line.
No.
Because if you delete the line, that's defining the boundary for you.
Okay.
Okay. So you want to do that. Also, by the way, a lot of times when you do things, if you notice on mine, my corridors keep telling me they need to be updated. I just go in and I'll just update them. You know, I just rebuild them. It's usually painless. It doesn't usually do anything. So I just redo that. Okay. And again, you get error messages, don't worry about it. So if I didn't want to see this, since this is on the 0 layer, I don't know if it's 0 because it set it on that way. Let me see if I can freeze that 0 layer. If I can freeze it, yeah, see, I can get rid of that line, but just don't erase that line or you're gonna kill it, okay? So that looks really nice now. Do we see that? Okay, you guys also have these little guys here. These are, I would probably not delete them. Those are the lines that it built when it built the intersection. So you could like put those on a 0 layer too if you didn't want them to show up or something else. I don't think it hurts if you delete them. But if you don't want to see them, just throw them on a layer that you got frozen. Get them out of your way. Okay. So we're gonna do another one real quick here. Let me see something here. I'm gonna get that out of the way too. Okay, so I want to build that intersection thing. So let's see. I've got this corridor. I'm gonna rebuild this corridor. So my corridor is frozen. Remember, I don't need that though. I'm gonna build the contours. We're gonna see how these contours. You notice how these contours have little matches. They're not hitting into the corridor or the intersection. So we're gonna go again to Home tab, create design. We're gonna create a boundary from the corridor. Again, you can't select your corridor, so just hit enter and you'll get that list. This guy is called corridor, which we could have named to intersection. So there's that boundary. By the way, notice it puts that boundary on whatever layer is current. Okay, so it doesn't automatically do it to 0. Okay. See, we have not built a surface on this yet, have we? Anybody remember? Well, we only have existing ground and proposed. So let's build the intersection surface. So we're going to go to the corridor. We're going to go to surfaces. Create that. Add the top. Add it as a break line. Boundary it. Shrink wrap it. You have to rebuild it. There's your contours through that. Do you notice how they match? So there's only one contour going through that intersection right now. Is that working? So how do we get rid of these contours in this intersection?
Do we have to create a boundary around it?
I just did already. Do you see mine?
Oh yeah, no, I see it.
You guys
Okay.
have one? If you don't have one, just go up here, create a boundary from corridor, and just select that intersection corridor. You'll get it. So remember, McAllister, like I said, what's happening is this guy's going on whatever the current layer is. So if I don't want to see him, I can freeze him or whatever, but don't erase it. So once you have that, then we're going to go back to the existing ground. We're going to go add another boundary now. Add a boundary. Again, just you can name it if you want, that's up to you. It's probably better too, but I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm just going to click that. So it did a mask on that and everything's good. Anybody see something going on mine that doesn't make any sense? Where's this contour going right here? Everybody see that? Anybody know why that's a problem? Well, it just could be like, see, notice what's up here. This guy should be hitting that dead, but what's happening is these guys aren't perfect the way they intersect. So you do get a little mistakes, but what's happening here, this style is probably not set to 1 and 5s, it's probably 2s and 10s. Let's see what's going on with that. Yeah, that's a 2 and 10 design instead of a 1 and 5. So if I go to 1 and 5 design, notice now it's hitting like it needs to. So everything's good. So make sure that your styles are matching, okay? So then we'd have to create another, surface for these guys for this, and then you'd have your whole thing. You guys want to go ahead and do that? Are you guys okay with this? Is anybody there?
I'm good.
Okay. Are you okay? Do you know what to do now, Shelley, or you want me to go the rest way?
I'm pretty sure I know what to do. I'll
Okay.
have to try it on my when it's time.
Yeah, you can try it on your own. I'm going to tell you one thing that's going to happen. Let me explain this. If you generate a surface on this alignment right here, it's going to go through this intersection as if the intersection doesn't exist. So in other words, you're going to get contours that come through here that don't make sense. So what you can do is you can generate this surface and then you can mask it with the intersection mask so that when they overlay, everything works perfect. So you end up doing a couple of masks, that's all it is. But that's something, I'm gonna have you guys do something almost exactly like this for our last lab. So you'll get the idea. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Notice in general how this hits pretty well. You'll get some irregularities like that one. That's just because of the calculations and it's just not perfect. So it's not going to be ideal, but in general, look, it's almost hitting it flawlessly. All right, I want to show you something here. I've never shown you this. Notice this guy's going to show up out here and we don't want that to show up because we basically end at 16. So go ahead and click on your alignment out here. Right click. We're going to go to alignment properties. So there's something called a mask that you can place on here. And so you can edit a mask into it from that station up to, let's say, I can take it just a little bit like that. Apply that mask. It should get rid of that. Let's see, that didn't work. Let me try that again. Usually it masks it right out. I don't know why it didn't. Did anybody's mask work? I did something wrong. Okay, so start station. Let's try going to 16 first. I'm going to snap to that endpoint and then go to that guy. It's not taking those regions for some reason. Try typing in 1600. All right, you should have regions in there. For some reason, you should be able to pick them, but notice what it does is it'll mask it out. Now that one's still there because that's a label, so I can get rid of that label. But that's something I can show you later if you, oop. and I deleted my alignment. I didn't want to do that. I just screwed up my cul-de-sac. All right, any questions?
No.
Here's something else I've noticed too when I built these things. Do you notice my existing ground line has disappeared here? I'm not sure why. That's actually a piece of it. It still thinks it's there, but it doesn't show up, and regen doesn't make it come back either. But then when I closed the drawing and opened it back up, it was there. So I don't know if it has to be, maybe I have to rebuild things. But anyway, I've noticed some real weird irregularities like that. So I'm just rebuilding everything to see what happens. And I almost guarantee it, if you save this drawing and open it back up, it usually will fix that. But for some reason, it left this one in. So, all right. So, McAllister, here's another question of yours you had about this guy not showing dashed, right?
Yeah, correct.
I mean, if I just type in LT scale in paper space or model space, mine's set to 1 right now. If I go to like a half, see, mine's not, did it change? Yeah. There might be something because of these regions that are going on and stuff. I'll have to figure that out. Mine's not changing either right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wouldn't get too concerned about it. I noticed that last night I was working on a project and it had, the lines were gone. So I closed the drawing and I came back to it later in the evening and they're there now all of a sudden. So yeah, I don't know. It does some funky things. And even though this layer is the layer it's supposed to be on, if you click on that, notice it says it's on that C road profile layer.
Yeah.
I mean, that layer's on and it's, so I don't know. It's like something gets masked out on it.
Right.
So there might be some kind of other masking going on. And it's possible that the corridor is masking it. I'm not sure. Or the surface. I'll try to figure that out, but I'm not worried about it too much.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? So this is kind of what we're going to be doing over the next, I'll get you guys started. We'll want to finish the one corridor you're working on, which is real simple. And then we're going to work on this. I'm going to have you build a cul-de-sac and an intersection. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. Hopefully it works well for you. Because this is, like I said, you learn how to do this, or at least get started in doing something like this. It really makes a huge difference. And I mean, this is really powerful. So if you got field crews out there laying stuff out and whatnot, I mean, you can give them the entire model and everything's governed and it all fits together. And so this is high level design. It really is. Okay. Any other questions? Let me point out this too, by the way, this alignment, this offset alignment, that's going to show up also on your plot. So if you don't want that to show up, just throw that on a layer also that you don't want it to show up on, so you can freeze it or something like that, and you're good to go. Okay, anybody else? Questions on anything they've had? Anything about what we did here?
No.
By the way, I don't think he doesn't, your author doesn't have books, excuse me, he doesn't have intersection modeling or cul-de-sac modeling. So that was something that usually you have to find. Now, there's some actually pretty good YouTube videos on all this stuff, although those guys sometimes go so quickly. And of course, they've built all the models already, the template, the assemblies and all of that. So you have to have some experience building those assemblies, because this is a big key to how this, oh, by the way, notice that I froze. That's because that's my, I froze my corridor. So that actually goes on the corridor layer. I wonder if that brought that back. No, that didn't. So these guys are the big piece right here, those and profiles and all of that stuff. So, but we've covered a whole lot of material, guys, and hopefully you're really picking up on it. But what I'm seeing is you're doing a good job. So any questions then?